My husband pushed a folder across the table and said, "Sign it, Lauren, or walk out right now." The entire restaurant went silent. His mother smirked like she'd been waiting years for that moment. I hadn't even read it yet, but the lawyer sitting quietly in the corner booth already had, and he was already reaching for a second file. My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 35 years old, and I've spent the last 18 years being the kind of wife nobody writes songs about. I work as a dental assistant. Decent pay, steady hours, nothing glamorous. I married young, and I married believing in something. While my husband built his supply business from a single rented office into a company with real money behind it, I kept everything else alive. The house, the schedules, the emotional weight that doesn't show up on any balance sheet. His family never respected that. To them, I was background furniture. His mother made little comments at every gathering, always wrapped in smiles, always landing like small cuts. Over the years, my husband started borrowing her lens. Money decisions stopped being conversations. Accounts I used to share access to quietly became his alone. I stopped being consulted. I started being managed. I had a dream once, a small dental clinic. Nothing fancy, just something of my own. I let it go somewhere around year 6, told myself the timing wasn't right. But honestly, I had slowly stopped believing I was allowed to build anything for myself. I wasn't powerful, I wasn't wealthy, but I had something they never expected me to have. If you've ever been made to feel invisible inside your own marriage, hit subscribe right now, because you're not alone in this. Have you ever been pressured into something that felt deeply wrong? Tell me in the comments. Click hype if you've ever held your ground when every person in the room was betting you wouldn't. The restaurant was one we'd visited on our 5th anniversary. Soft lighting, linen napkins, the faint smell of warm bread coming from the kitchen. I remember thinking the choice of location was a peace offering. 18 years. I wore a dress I hadn't touched in 2 years. I actually felt hopeful on the drive over. Both families were already seated when we walked in. That alone should have told me everything. We hadn't even finished ordering when my husband reached under his chair and pulled out a folder. He placed it in front of me the way someone drops a receipt. No warmth, no explanation, just expectation. "It's just a simple transfer," he said. "Sign it and we move forward." I looked down. Property rights, joint assets, my name being quietly erased from things I had helped hold together for nearly 2 decades. His mother leaned across the table. "You've benefited enough already." Every head turned toward me. I could feel the pressure of it, the collective weight of a room that had already decided how this would end. "Explain it to me," I said. He exhaled slowly. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I didn't reach for the pen. He looked at me then with something I hadn't seen before. Not anger exactly, colder than that. "Then leave, right now." The table held its breath, and in that silence I noticed the man in the corner booth for the first time. He wasn't eating. He had a folder open and he was watching our table with focused, professional attention. Next to the open folders sat a second one, closed, waiting. Nobody else noticed him, but I did. I woke up the next morning and opened my banking app out of habit. Access denied. I called the bank and spent 19 minutes on hold before a representative confirmed my access had been restricted. Primary account holder's request. My husband was in the kitchen when I hung up. He didn't look surprised when I asked him what he'd done. "You don't need access anymore," he said, and turned back to his coffee. Things moved fast after that. I started disappearing from group messages, family decisions, property discussions, even the planning for a business event we'd always attended together. All of it happened in conversations I was no longer part of. His sister called me irresponsible to a cousin who repeated it to me directly. The word unstable got used more than once. They were building a version of me that would make everything easier to justify. Then the legal notice arrived, preliminary separation terms already drafted, already submitted to the court. His brother called the same afternoon. "This will go smoother if you cooperate," he said. I sat with that word for a long time. Cooperate. Something moved in me when I heard it. The grief was still there, heavy and real, but something else was rising underneath it. I stopped reacting and started reading. I went through every document I could access, slowly, carefully. The numbers didn't add up. Transfers I didn't recognize. Dates that contradicted things I remembered clearly. I had helped with early business paperwork back when we were still a team. I knew what the original structure looked like. What I was looking at now looked nothing like it.
What they didn't know was that I had been paying attention for months before that dinner. I had been quietly copying financial statements whenever I had access, saving them without saying a word to anyone. I had noticed the unusual transfers and written down amounts and dates in a small notebook I kept in the glove compartment of my car. Because I had helped set up the original business accounts, I understood what normal looked like, and what I was seeing wasn't normal. 3 weeks before the anniversary dinner, I reached out to someone. I told him I was worried about what I was finding. He told me to send everything I had. I knew more than they thought I did, and I had a plan they never saw coming. Gerald Haynes had handled the original business contracts years ago, back when my husband still treated every decision like something we were building together. Gerald had always spoken to me directly, never around me, and when I called him out of the blue, he listened without interrupting. He reviewed everything I sent. 2 days later, his voice on the phone was measured but clear. "This doesn't look right," he said. "Not at all." He had found transfers moved through layered accounts in patterns that served no legitimate business purpose, assets restructured without disclosure, a deliberate architecture designed to leave me with nothing before I ever understood a split was coming. Gerald was careful with his language, because that's who he is, but the meaning was plain. My husband grew more relaxed every day that passed. He had stopped being cautious. He believed the result was already locked in. His family had started talking about the house like I was already gone. His mother mentioned wanting to repaint the living room. When his lawyer reached out asking if I was ready to meet and wrap things up, I said yes without hesitation. The conference room was cold. Not dramatically cold, just the kind of flat, recycled air that office buildings keep running year-round. The carpet was gray. The table was long. My husband sat across from me with his lawyer on one side and his brother on the other, the original documents already spread out in front of him, organized and confident. "Let's finish this today," he said. I sat down. I didn't speak yet. Gerald sat beside me and set his briefcase on the table without rushing. My husband glanced at Gerald. Something shifted slightly in his expression. Gerald opened the briefcase. He placed one folder on the table. Then he placed a second folder directly beside it. "Before we go any further," Gerald said, "we need to review these first." The room changed. The second folder held 14 months of documented transfers, specific account numbers, specific dates, assets moved without disclosure, structured to vanish before any fair assessment could be made. Gerald walked through each page with the calm of someone who had prepared thoroughly and knew the other side hadn't prepared for this at all. My husband's lawyer leaned in close and whispered. My husband's jaw tightened. "This is irrelevant," my husband said. Gerald looked at him evenly. "Actually, it changes everything." The brother stopped talking mid-sentence. His mother, who had insisted on being present, went completely still. My husband looked at the documents and then looked at me, and for the first time in what felt like years, he didn't look like someone who had already won. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just sat there and watched the room rearrange itself. I didn't sign a single page that day, not without complete legal protection and a full accounting of every asset that had been moved. My husband walked out of that meeting in a position he had not walked in expecting. The confidence his family had carried for months, that particular certainty they wore like expensive coats, was gone before we stood up to leave. Gerald filed the necessary legal responses the following week. The process wasn't finished, but the foundation had completely shifted. I walked out into the afternoon and stood on the pavement for a moment. No one waiting for me, no one watching, just the sound of passing traffic and the feeling of solid ground under my feet. For the first time in years, I wasn't asking for respect, I was taking it back. If your partner has ever tried to push you into something that wasn't fair, you already know that feeling at the table. Share your story in the comments. Subscribe if this reached you somewhere real. Click hype to help this find someone who needs to hear it today. Did this story hit home? Like the video and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Click hype to help this story reach others who've been standing in that same corner, wondering if they have anything left to fight with. They do. You did. So did I.